Welcome everyone back to the Pathways to Success podcast. I am very excited about the guest we have on the show today, and it is Christopher Manske, and he is the owner and operator of Manske Wealth Management, a Houston-based investment firm that manages nearly $500 million for individuals and institutions all over the world. With over 20 years of experience in investing, he and his team have been praised, published, or quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Reader's Digest, Forbes, Financial Advisor magazine, and many more. He is the author of the upcoming book, The Prepared Investor, which will launch September 29th, 2020. You can learn more about Chris and his team at manskewealth.com. That's MANSKEWEALTH.com. Chris, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, no, and shout out to Waleen who created this connection. That's one of this beautiful thing about having a platform or all these incredible connections we get to make. So shout out to Waleen and thank you for being on the podcast, Chris.
Oh gosh, thank you. I think referrals are a big part of my professional life. So the fact that you and I are talking because of a referral just really cements that. 2 thumbs up.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how are things amidst your industry, your world, in a COVID-19 world right now?
Well, I'd like to say things are great, but as you know, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of issues that, vary from individual to individual, community to community, and we manage money for institutions and individuals all over the world. So, we get to see firsthand what is it like just down the street here in downtown Houston, which today is one of the hot spots for the United States. At the same time, we get on the phone with somebody who is in New York or is in California or is in Italy or Israel. And the way that people are looking at their personal protection in quarantine and COVID situations, it varies, and it's pretty staggering.
So I'm curious, if there was a silver lining, if any, is there anything that you're seeing, a light at the end of the tunnel, a way that you potentially reinvented your business to serve individuals in a greater capacity? I guess, tell me about that.
Sure. Well, I love that phrase, reinvent, because sometimes you do something over and over again because it's the right thing to do. And then situations change and you don't, but it's called reinventing. And so that's absolutely an experience that we've had as a team, is that, we are dedicated to staying in touch with the folks that have put their trust in us. We stay in touch on a monthly basis at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And we've maintained that through this entire quarantine experience. So what has happened is that we've had people in the media and some new clients that say, wow, this is incredible. COVID has shown us that you're stepping up and that you're reinventing communication, when the reality is that this is the service model that we've just remained committed to, instead of letting the turbulence bring us off track or try to do something that is a bit less because it's easier or because the problems in the community get you distracted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely something. We're both speakers, right? And that's kind of how we connected. Waleen is my speaker agent. And something that I've always thought was that speakers are problem solvers with their ideas, with their content. And for me, it's like within a period of 48 hours, all my speaking engagements went away in March. But what's starting to happen is, of course, this virtual platform is becoming much more prevalent. And my business is actually recovering. It seems the market is accepting this whole virtual thing. So instead of these sort of large one-time engagements, I'm getting these more longer, ongoing sort of month-to-month like training programs. And now I'm able to sort of reach customers that I wouldn't have been able to because of my geographic limitations. So the value didn't change, but the medium in which you deliver value has changed. And for me, that is at least one thing I can see for sure I have benefited from.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. You're right that the medium of how you conduct your relationship, before quarantine, we were phone calls and face-to-face, as much face-to-face as we could make happen. But now, of course, it's face-to-face in the way you and I are doing it right now, using the internet to make sure that they can see the smile on your face,
Mhm.
and you can see the whites of their eyes, and see their reactions to descriptions of the market, or when you ask a certain question, if they're really engaged or not. That's
Mhm.
an important part of my business. So I'm glad for the technology.
Yeah, I am too, but nothing beats the in person. It's like I lean heavily towards extroversion, and the energy gathering effect is just not the same through Zoom, but it is a great substitute in the interim as things hopefully get to normal sooner than later. So good. Well, Chris, I want to understand your journey of success. This podcast is called The Pathways to Success. So obviously you've created incredible success in your life. So if you were telling your story, if this was your movie, like what is the origin story? Where do you start?
That is a really good question. I think a good place to start is my undergraduate work. Because I
Mhm.
went to a military school for my undergraduate degree, it had an impact on my ideas of balance, my ideas of what is hard work, the idea of how many hours of work is necessary versus possible.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think if I had done my undergraduate at a more traditional college, I don't know, I would have had those same ideas of balance and leadership through presence. So I would start there. United States Military Academy at West Point. I graduated and went into the Army for about 6 years before I transitioned out to be a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch.
So I'm curious, what did you learn from West Point that perhaps may be a little bit different than traditional universities that you think may have had an impact in setting you up for what you're doing now?
Well, the lesson that I took away, it might be different for other folks. The lesson I took away was how much I could pack into a day, how much task accomplishment can be done in a regular 24-hour period when you're focused and excited, motivated to get something done. Even a real big task that takes years to accomplish, it can be a lot less number of total days when you use those hours to their optimum. The typical schedule for me as a cadet at West Point was about 18 hours of truly doing work, with maybe 45 minutes to 75 minutes of food time.
Mhm. So going into the program, would you say that you did have some natural wiring to allow you to sort of succeed, or how much of it sort of was shaped? What did that experience look like?
I don't know how much natural wiring I had. I'd like to think that there is some talent out there that just is natural. I don't know that I have any of that. There
Mhm.
are folks that they just skate through easy breezy and they're at the top of the heap. But I've always had to work hard to get where I wanted to go, and I've never thought that was a problem. I deeply believe that anyone can accomplish the results they seek with the right amount of education, the right amount of effort, a good mentor here or there who can guide them when they hit a rough patch, and not to let your natural ability to make that be the limit or the criteria you use for what you can accomplish.
Mhm. And as far as never underestimating how much can sort of be done in a day, like what are tools or strategies that you use to plan to maximize your output?
Right. Well, so one of the things that I like to do is to delegate as much as I can in a meaningful way. That is not new. I'm not offering your listeners like a grandiose special idea, but just to reinforce when you're reading those books that say delegate and leverage the time of other smart people, it sure has helped me. You put faith in folks, it, uh, it's usually returned in a meaningful way.
How do you know what to do yourself versus tasks to delegate?
If I don't have someone around me that can competently do it, then I need to be doing it.
Okay.
Otherwise, if there's someone else that has the ability and and the authority, then I want to delegate. I want to give them that chance to shine and make their mark.
And what would you consider to be sort of your superpower that Chris does best that you cannot delegate?
Well, besides awesome podcasts,
Yeah.
uh, No, I think, jokes aside, the strength that I am, you know, most reliant on is my willingness to go the distance.
Mhm.
When somebody says you're going to have to stay late to get that done, when someone says, oh, that's going to be a little bit extra, that puts a smile on my face. I love to hear that. I love to hear that it's hard to do, that someone else maybe is not going to be able to do it. That challenges, it resonates within me. And I'm grateful that that's a part of what makes me tick.
Yeah. And when it comes to maximizing your output for the day, what are some systems or tools that you use to stay organized to ensure you deliver what was committed to be done that day?
Well, we use pretty basic systems. So the typical Office 365, where you've got the Microsoft Outlook, we've got uh, basic systems that are industry specific. Morningstar Office is a wonderful CRM and data aggregator. We have, using that system, we have every client, every month, what was the touch, what were the notes from that meeting, what follow-ups need to happen. Anyone that does Salesforce, for example, they have probably a similar setup. The tool, I think, is not the story, because any good team is going to have their tools to stay on top of their workload. I think that the story is the connection that the workforce has to the importance of using the tools. When the team, everyone on the team deeply wants to accomplish the mission, they have that same vision that I do, that all clients deserve monthly communication. This is unheard of in my industry, by the way, Julian. I mean, it doesn't matter which brokerage firm you go to, the service model doesn't exist at the brokerage level. It's individualized, where a financial advisor gets to decide, who do I call? Who do I email? Maybe this client, I'm just going to send them a birthday card once a year. It's up to the advisor. And when you get hired into a brokerage firm, there's no training on, here's the brokerage firm service model, because there isn't one.
Yeah.
They tell them, do what seems right with your business. And as a consumer, you just can't know what you're getting,
Mhm.
because the advisors might even change. Like day one, they're telling you they'll call every month, but then 3 years later, their business has changed. They've got a lot more bigger clients. And so now they're calling you every 6 months,
Yeah.
or not at all. And that's a real issue in my industry, one that we are fanatic about doing something in the way of positive change. And that every client every month it's a it's a big piece of the puzzle.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about your career and some of the keys to success. And this is why I sort of have a newfound appreciation for the financial investment world. My fiance is actually, she does recruiting for Fisher Investments. So all she
Oh,
does
right.
is talk to financial advisors. And also just my background is talent acquisition. Also, I've recruited a number of salespeople. And a truth is that it is much more rare to see a top producer than not. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
it's always fascinating to me of how someone becomes successful in sales in a purely production model, when there's principles that you can follow, but there's usually some kind of unique element that somebody adds to it. And it's always interesting to see what that perfect alchemy is. And I want to know what that is for you. Okay. So first off, when you graduated from West Point, why financial investment? Why did you become passionate about this industry? How did you get there?
Well, it was an accident, in all honesty. I was in the Army for 6 years, and when I was transitioning out of the Army, I had some time to kill because of days off that had accumulated. And during that time, a friend of mine who was at Merrill Lynch suggested that I take a job with them just to get some exposure to finance, because I didn't have any. And I thought that would be a pretty meaningful thing as I was on my way to middle management in a Fortune 500 company. And once I was in that desk, in that seat, doing the work and learning about what financial advisors do and who they do it for and why, I realized that I had stumbled into something that was really special. And it was very hard on me, because as I said, I had a job already lined up, that it was just a start date that was a ways off. And I had to reach out to those people and tell them, I apologize. I know I committed to working with you, but I'm in a situation that it just fits me so perfectly. I have to pursue it.
Mhm. So what did that look like in the, let me ask this a better way. Looking at, you've been in it for 20 years, right?
Okay.
If you could break it down into maybe three keys to success, what made you become an outlier in this industry?
Well, the first key to success would be my sense of balance.
Balance.
The second key to success would be what I stayed focused on. You know, a lot of times producers, there's a focus, a culture maybe for that person or for that team. So I'll say it was my sense of balance, what I was focused on. And then the last one was I had some really lucky, fortunate moments around me that I was able to take advantage of. So I was ready to take advantage of the fortunate opportunities. So first, to talk about balance,
Mm-hmm.
most people, when they say balance, they say, I'm going to try to fit the things that are important to me within a certain time period. And Julian, if I said to you, I'm going to sleep and do my work and go to church and take care of my family, I'm going to do it all every hour.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, nobody would make that their life. And if I expand that time to a single day, suddenly there's a lot of takers. There are many people that they think of balance on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
If I expand it to a week, there's a lot of takers. Now that we're talking about the vast majority of US workers, they think of balance, they think of it on a weekly basis. But I had the the fortune of having a mentor in the Army that had talked to me about balance on a decade, maybe lifetime timeline. And so I was comfortable and willing to put in a lot more work at the start of my career with the idea that my balance in my life was going to be spread out over my life. And in having this discussion with other professionals, people I admire, I realized that it's nothing to brag about because there are men and women who are so much more successful than I am, and they have thought of balance on a generational level, that they think of their life as just a part of the true balance, which involves their children and their grandchildren, and they're trying to create multi-generational wealth for their grandkids, because that's when there will be the other side, the yin and the yang, the other side of
Yeah.
the work. So
So the
yeah.
first was the balance, and the second one was, did you say focus?
Yes, focus. So what happens a lot of times in sales, like you said, is that there is the high producers, and when you ask them, what are you aiming to do?
Yeah.
A lot of them will say, well, I'm aiming to make money. I'm aiming to have a certain amount of compensation, or there's a trip and I'm aiming to get a trip. And because I was in the Army and didn't have any sales experience before becoming a financial advisor, I didn't have any bad habits or any, real issues that needed to be corrected. I was a blank slate, and I was lucky enough to get involved with the Zig Ziglar style mentorship, not just Zig Ziglar, but, lots of those sales trainers that, like Brian Tracy, who talks to the non-monetary side, where the client comes first. Just help them,
Mhm.
educate them, and if you successfully do that, the rest of it will come. You take the focus off of what you're trying to get and
Mhm.
put the focus onto what you're trying to give. And so my focus through my whole career has been that I will gain by giving, and it has never failed me.
Especially in that first year, that is usually the hardest because you're a lot of times building something from scratch, right? Creating a client base out of nothing. Where did you focus your efforts to start to build that book? What really moved the needle for you?
Well, I was able to start a networking group in the greater Houston area called the Winner's Circle.
Awesome. Okay.
And these professionals, we'd come together and we would intensely try to help each other grow. And these were people that I respected, people that they had a network, or they, like me, were new to their career and were trying to build their network. And as you develop those relationships and follow through and prove that you're both competent and trustworthy, then it it really, for me, it was a major movement forward. Another thing that helped me out was that I earned a position with the University of Texas employee assistance provider. So that there's over 100,000 employees in that EAP, employee assistance provider, and I was one of the financial advisors that anytime they had a question or concern of a financial nature, they would reach out to me. And after a year of doing that, I was asked to be the lead financial advisor for that team. So yeah, I think that was a major movement forward for me. Thanks.
I love it. My word for that would be strategic networking, right? Instead of being a consumer of networking events, you became sort of a producer of them. And I know that works because a friend of mine, Trevor, do you know Trevor Houston? The Who You Know
No.
Job Networking Show? Search him because that
Okay.
reminds me of like what you did. He built he's a New York Life, so life insurance, right? But
Right.
he built an entire tribe out of helping people find jobs. The Who You Know Job Networking Show, and he adds real tremendous value to them, but also provides the ancillary benefit of the insurance piece. It sounds very similar. Success leaves clues, right? There's a pattern there. And also, you had access, you built trust within a distribution point. What was the name of that organization you said?
The winner's circle.
The winner, is that the name of the one that you started?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that
Yeah.
group, it still exists 20 years later. One of my colleagues is a financial advisor in that room, still meeting on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Also here in Dallas, Bill Wallace, Success North Dallas, the oldest, I think, networking group here in the North Texas area. And I think he was an insurance guy also. There's something to that, 100%, right?
Right.
What would you say would be the biggest mistake you see new financial advisors make in their first year?
Well, the biggest mistake is that they're not willing to put in the hours. Usually they come into the industry thinking that 9 to 5 will be a normal, and so if they do 7 to 5, they're they're on track. But they're really not, especially if they're being recruited into one of the big brokerage firms where there's quotas on their production. You have to bring in a certain number of millions of dollars, or you have to create a certain number of commissioned sales. If they're in those kind of situations, 7 to 5 is not going to cut it. They're going to end up working a bit more. So I think the biggest mistake is that they don't put in the time.
Gotcha. What other sort of like books or philosophies that you have used to feed your mind that have really helped shape you to become what you're doing today?
Well, I really have gotten a lot out of 12 Rules for Life
Mm.
by Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Gordon Peterson, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
actually came out pretty recently over the past few years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been a great book. I also enjoyed reading Nine Lies About Work, which is a wonderful text that kind of started out as a Harvard Business Review article. And anyone that through this podcast that picks up that book, please keep in mind that I got a lot from it because of what I disagreed with
Okay.
and because of what I agreed with.
Yeah. Okay. So, Chris, before we jump into some of the technical topics and, of course, the book here, this is called the Pathways to Success. And I'm always curious to see what people's definitions of it. How do you define what success is?
That is a good question. I have multiple ways of defining it depending on the venue. So for example, if I'm at home and I'm talking with my wife and 4 daughters, then success is about our collective love and our health and our willingness to work together and to help each other. Our culture as a family, when someone's down, there's someone else that helps to pick them back up. That to me is success there. Here in the office, the success is a little bit more easy to measure because it has to do with how much money did we make, how much money did we need to make. But when you take the focus off of that and put it on where, as I said earlier, where I think it should be, it turns into, did we talk with all of the clients that have put their trust in us on a monthly basis? Have we asked for referrals? Have we helped to make it easy for people to know that we would love to grow? Those, I think, are important parts of what it means to be successful in my book. If my community is aware that I'm wanting to grow and the people who work with me see me doing good work, that sounds pretty good to me.
Love it. You have how many daughters, you said?
4 daughters.
Or daughters. What are their
Yes.
names?
Charlotte is the oldest, and then her 3 sisters are all the same age. We have triplets. Jessica, my wife, and I have
Triplets?
triplets.
Oh man, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's been a real whirlwind. And the triplets, their names are Adriana, Amelia, and Avery.
Well, shout out to all of your daughters. So I want to hit it from this angle. How would you how would you describe to your daughters what a life well lived is?
That's a good question. Well, so if one of my daughters says to me, "What's a life well lived?" I'd say it was a useful one.
A useful one. I love it.
Yeah.
No, love it, love it, love it. Okay, awesome. All right. So Chris, let's look at you speak about preparation as a general important part of self-growth. What do you mean by preparation?
Well, I can say what I don't mean. What a lot of times people confuse is they think that preparation is the same as predicting the future. I do not mean predicting the future. What I mean is you look to what is probable, you look to what you want to accomplish, and then you take the steps to avoid the pitfalls that make sense. And the easiest, most simplest way to think of this, because I've just went through it with my 16-year-old daughter, is you're going to be driving, you need to get somewhere, you don't want to have a flat tire. So if you see potholes in the road, you need to avoid them. I don't have to predict the future to say that there will be a pothole at the corner of Main and Smith. I just need to be on the lookout, knowing that if I see one, don't put your tire into the pothole.
Mhm.
But I also know that it's likely you're going to end up with a flat tire. So let's prepare now so that you know how to deal with it. What is the pattern that you need to be ready for? Well, a flat tire has a certain sound to it. There's a certain feel to it. What do you do when you've got the flat tire? Okay, do you have the tools in the car? I didn't predict I would have a flat tire, but I was prepared because the tools are in the car. And we do this every day. I mean, everyone does this. You've got a protector on your cell phone because you might drop it and you want to be prepared for that event. You bring an umbrella with you to work because it might rain. I want to be prepared. I'm not predicting the future. I'm simply looking to what the pattern is and suggesting that we make the effort in the present so that if that bad thing occurs, we're going to be a little bit easier going with it.
So the book is called The Prepared Investor. Why did you write this book?
I wrote it because of all of the questions that I've received in my 20 years that in some way or fashion focus on what about if? What about if the terrorists attack? What about if the water supply gets polluted? What about if this administration gets us into a war? What about if the market goes down and no one has a job? What about if there's a disease? You know, we're dealing with that right now.
Right now, yeah.
People are concerned to the point of, I've watched in my 2 decades of being in the investment world, I've watched where words have been introduced into the language. A prepper is something today. The Wall Street Journal says that there's over 3.5 million people that they won't bury gold in their backyard, but they are truly interested in trying to be ready for a bad thing in the future. There's something that they're worried about, whether it's that the next virus is going to be major. Again, we know what that feels like. We're dealing with it. Or that there's a terrorist attack, or that there's some kind of a problem with cybersecurity and they can't access the internet the way they normally do. These things are realistic concerns, and it affects our money. It affects the way we use our money. How can we be ready for it?
And who did you write the book for?
Well, I initially had thought that the book was for my clients, people that maybe they aren't specifically working with me, but they have a portfolio and they're wanting to consider specific steps to take so that they've got the jack and tire iron in their car if there's a flat tire. But over the years of revision and getting my agent and publisher to buy into the project, I see that there is a lot more people who would want to read this book. So in addition to someone who has a portfolio and they're concerned about the future, anyone who advises people, any financial advisor, any CPA, any investment advisor, if they're hearing of concerns from their clients, this is the kind of book that it's a great gift for them, but it's excellent information to allow them to address those concerns in a meaningful way. And the reason I say in a meaningful way is because one of the shortcomings right now in the investment industry is that Wall Street approaches every single crisis with the exact same solution. Regardless of the circumstances, the solution is do nothing, hold the course, stay with the program, don't make any changes. And this is like a stopped clock solution because there are crises where that makes sense, but there's a lot of crises where it does not make sense, where there's truly opportunity that is being left on the table for the average investor, not for the hedge fund manager who's plugged in at Wall Street. I mean, for all of us with just a little education, just like sitting down with my daughter and showing her, this is how you change the tire. With just a little education, a little forethought, a little preparation, suddenly you're in a position to be able to protect and even grow your portfolio in the face of crisis.
What are maybe 2 or 3 actions or strategies that listeners and viewers can implement next to help them at least start getting prepared for whatever may come?
Sure. Well, I think some of the action items in the book are very much common sense, kind of like a reminder of, look, you already know this, but recommit to it. You know, kind of like telling a driver, don't text while you're driving. We've all heard that. But look, here's a reminder. You don't want to hit something and end up, in a car accident. So don't text while driving. And a good example of that from the book is spend less than what you make.
Okay.
So often, especially at the start of somebody's career, the idea of saving is something for the future. Right now, I need to get the big house. I need to get the big car. This marriage needs to be celebrated in a way that everyone knows that I'm successful. And, in the last 10 years, I can't remember a single wedding that I was invited to that was an inexpensive wedding. They're very expensive. So at the start of someone's career, it's very difficult to pay attention to that need to save. And what I suggest to folks is when you buy that fancy car, you get that overly large home, what you're doing is you're showing your community that you used to have money. You don't have it anymore because you've bought this, or now you're in debt and you owe someone something that you didn't have to.
Mm-hmm. And if there was one habit or piece of advice that you could share with our viewers and listeners that would help us start to accumulate wealth, like what would that be?
Okay, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So this is something that I've talked to in a variety of venues, and I'd love to share with your listeners too, Julian. So right now, what most people do is they accept their pay into their checking account. They do whatever work they do, and their pay comes into their checking account. It's now available for them to spend. And the norm is that if they're ahead of the game and they're saving, as I just said, an important thing is to spend less than what you make, and they're saving, they'll usually have it set some certain amount of money is automatically removed from their checking account and sent to their savings account. And this is applauded. This is, this is something that we say, oh, good job. You're saving. That, set it and forget it, out of sight, out of mind. Lots of ways that we celebrate that behavior. But the problem with it is that it doesn't work in the long haul. So let me give you an example. We've got a husband and a wife. One of them is a consultant. The other one is a banker. Mm-hmm. And in the last 5 years, the consultant did a lot of overtime work that gave extra pay and received a bonus every year. The banker got 2 promotions, and there was 1 year that the banker got a promotion, got a bonus. Through all of that, they were saving their $1,000 a month into their savings account. It's a fixed savings, which means that all the extra money, what happens to it? For the vast majority of people, what happens is it gets frittered away, it gets spent, and what was a very powerful potential nest egg, seed is now just money that it kind of filtered through and was not really held on to. And the reason is because they were mentally thinking, well, I'm already saving. I'm saving. I've got my savings fixed, set it and forget it. I don't have to worry about saving. So the way that I'd say we could combat that, and this is one of the action steps in the book, is that we swap where the money goes. So instead of the money going to your checking account, everything you make, if you do a garage sale, if you get a bonus, if you sell something on eBay, it's your regular W-2 money, whatever money that the family makes, it all goes into the savings account. And then a fixed amount comes out once a month, twice a month, whatever makes sense for your family, but it's a fixed amount that comes out for your lifestyle, for your bills. And when you do it that way, what you've done is you've fixed your lifestyle for the long term, but you've left your savings to be the flexible, growth-oriented machine that it should be. Where I think most of your listeners, what they're doing right now is they've allowed their lifestyle to be the flexible, hey, however it works, and their savings is fixed and static. And if you switch it, it really makes a big difference over the long haul.
That, I don't think I've heard that strategy before, but that sounds really, really good. I appreciate you sharing that. Huh. So of all the financial books that have been written out there, and they certainly have changed my life, of the ones that I've read, what do you suppose is sort of the unique angle that you are presenting with your book?
Well, I think that it's the action steps. The one I just shared with you is a perfect example. It's a thought that you just had not been exposed to yet. And I think a lot of your listeners haven't been. There's a number of action steps like that, a way to look at it that just turn it around a little bit and you can do better. Mm-hmm. But to be more specific, one thing that I think is going to really resonate with readers from the book is the uncovering, the revealing of the pattern that represents the human reaction to crisis in the stock market. There is absolutely a pattern, and I've dubbed it the active war market pattern. There are certain types of crises that pattern can be expected to occur. Mm-hmm. Once you're educated and okay, that's what a pothole looks like, I should avoid it. Well, now I know this kind of crisis leads to this kind of national reaction in the investment markets. I can either protect myself from it, or I could try to capitalize on it and get ahead because I know what the wave is going to look like. And so I think that the pattern, the active war market pattern, is going to be something that really sticks with people in the same way that, like the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, what I think I really took away was 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours was one of the many tenets in that book that I took away. I think in the prepared investor, it's going to be the active war market pattern.
Yeah. If I can ask you this one thing that I keep hearing all the time, there's some people that I do follow and have consumed sort of their content, Peter Schiff and also Ron Paul, right? And they talk about the potential of a dollar crisis. And for me, the way that they paint this picture, it seems to be the worst case scenario. Do you have any ideas on that and how potentially your book could shed some light on if that is a possibility? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I'm no expert, so.
Yeah, well, I think that that's a perfect example of a kind of crisis.
Yeah.
And if we think about the dollar devaluing, there's a lot of different ideas of what could make that occur. Let's just assume that what makes it occur is that the world's currency basket stops using dollar denomination and goes to a different national currency, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But once that happens, then there's many people that feel that would devalue the dollar. Or some people say our national debt, as it gets worse and worse, at some point we will destroy the value of the dollar ourselves because we'll be creating more dollars to pay that debt. And that will, create a real issue for the value of the dollar. Okay, whatever seed that grows the tree, the point is that we're worried about the dollar going down in value. Then the question becomes, where do we hold value? Because if we hold it in value, we're going to lose money. If we hold it in dollars, we're going to lose money. Where can we hold it so that we don't lose money? And if you're talking with somebody who their expertise is apartment complexes, they're going to say apartment complexes. And they would be right. If you're talking to someone that deals in car dealerships, they'd say automobiles, and they would be right. In my case, I'm an investor in the public markets, and I say own equities. The reason all these people are right is because it's not dollars. The car has intrinsic value, a company has intrinsic value. And so as the dollar devalues, those things become more valuable because it takes more dollars to buy them. And I love to describe this with a simple explanation from the stock market. You've got a company that makes widgets, and the widget right now, it costs $5 to buy it. People are buying it, and the company makes $1 million a year, and so much of that is profit. Let's say 10% of it is profit. Okay, well, as the dollar devalues, that company's widget is going to cost more. So it used to be that the widget was $5. Now it's $10. Now it's $20. So the company, it used to make $1 million in revenue. Well, now it's making 2 million or 4 million in revenue because the dollar isn't worth what it used to be. Well, that means that the stock price has gone up as well. The stock before was based on cash flow of, a certain amount. Well, now that cash flow is a lot more. A revenue of a certain amount, now that revenue is a lot more. Owning stocks is a wonderful way to offset the worries of a devalued dollar.
You're making me think differently. You're making me think less about the currency and more about what actually has value, right? So let me ask you this then. A lot of times people think that investing is for the uber rich or whatnot. And I know some firms have like sort of a net worth or asset minimum, like 500K or whatnot. When is the right time to invest for, let's say, someone who has a net worth of less than 50K? Like, what can you do with a little bit of savings that we do have?
That's a wonderful question because everything that is big starts out small.
Yeah.
Everything that you see, the big oak tree came from a small acorn. And I take great exception with the Wall Street culture of you have to have $1 million to work with me. You have to have 5 million to work with me. I know that a very common line in the sand is 500,000. We don't have a line in the sand as a firm. What we believe is that there's only 4 times that somebody should be hiring a financial advisor. Here are the 4 times. Number 1 is if you recognize you do not have the time to manage your portfolio. You don't have the time, you need to delegate it, bring in an expert to do that. The second time is maybe you've got the time in your work week to do this, but you hate doing it. Well, if you hate doing it, hire someone to do it for you. The third reason is maybe you've got the time, maybe you love to do it, but deep down you're worried that you're not good at it. You have an insecurity about your competence level. Okay, well then hire an expert, delegate it. Perhaps you could even learn from that person and ultimately get to where you can do it yourself. Those are the 3 most common. The fourth one is pretty rare, but the fourth time to hire an advisor is you've got the time, you love to do it, and you have the expertise to do it. Mm-hmm. But you are worried about or connected to someone who doesn't. So this is, most typically this is a spouse who they're taking care of it. They don't need a financial advisor, but who they're married to will. And so they want to bring that financial advisor, bring that professional in while they're still alive. They can make the choice, they can manage that financial advisor. And then if something happens to that person, then the spouse is for sure all set and already has a relationship in place. If one of those 4 is not real for one of your listeners, well, then I don't think they should hire a financial advisor. It has nothing to do with the amount of money. You don't need a financial advisor. If you've got 10 grand and these tenants I just described, they say you should hire a financial advisor, then I think you should.
Good.
It might be hard to find an excellent one because of the Wall Street culture that focuses on you've got to have a lot of money. But you could go to an excellent one who's got good morals, get some advice. Maybe you have to pay in a one-time basis, get some advice, and run your race a little bit longer and come back to see him in 2 years or 3 years. Get some more advice, run your race a little bit longer. But I'd say don't let a dollar amount in the sand, don't let that sway you, because that is Wall Street offering a culture that is not about the customer.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, close us out with any kind of final advice for all of us to sort of take steps to become a prepared investor.
Well, I'd love it if they buy the book. They can Google The Prepared Investor. It's sold all over the place. Amazon's probably the most common one. But in addition to that, keep in mind that we would never say, hey, I don't know when you're going to have a heart attack, so just go ahead and eat all the terrible food that you can eat. It doesn't matter, because I just can't predict when that heart attack would happen. It doesn't even make sense. But somehow we think it makes sense when Wall Street says, well, we don't know when the next crisis is going to happen or what it's going to be. We can't predict the future. So let's just do nothing to prepare for any eventuality. And when it hits, just stay the course. When I say it like that, you can see this doesn't make sense. And I hope that that's a good way to leave your listeners as a final thought.
Love it. Chris, tell us all how to connect with you, how to follow you. Once again, where to buy the book. Tell us all that.
Thank you. Well, so The Prepared Investor, it's on any place that you buy books, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Amazon. I'm on Twitter. You can find my company, Manske Wealth. Just Google my name, Chris Manske. We're really easy to find. If you'd like to connect, LinkedIn and Twitter are my two favorites, but we're everywhere. And if you'd like to get more information, just shoot a note through the website. You can shoot a note through LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from anybody.
Awesome. Chris, this was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed having you on the podcast, and we'll make sure to have all of your contact information in the show notes as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice versa. This has been a joy.
And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pathways to Success.